Now 45% of people meet their spouses online. It's not like it doesn't work for anybody. I would say that 90% of men are not even suitable for you to have a conversation. If you're going to go on a date, the energy you want is more like you're sitting next to a stranger on an airplane.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Relationships, and we've got another episode for you today. I'm excited for today's guest. We're actually bringing on an expert in the dating field. His name is Evan Mark Katz, and he's the author of 4 books featured in multiple media outlets, which is incredible. His blog, which is actually how I found him online, has over 35 million readers, which is insane to me. And he also has a really great podcast called Love You Podcast with over 2.5 million downloads. That is a goal of mine here. So Evan, thank you so much for coming on and for being a guest. And excited to chat today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Yeah. And so I would love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about you. You're a dating coach, you're an author, you're a podcaster, you do the whole gamut, and I love it. But I'm curious, how did you get started in this, and kind of what is your practice, the coaching that you do?
Yeah, like you, I'm an Angelino. I moved here in my mid-20s to be a screenwriter. I'm a little older, a lot older. And so it was when Friends was on the air. I was like, well, someone writes for Friends. Why not me? I always wanted to be that guy. And so I spent my 20s as a screenwriter, and I was in Project Greenlight with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in the early 2000s. I was finished 3rd out of 7,500 people in their screenwriting contest. Wow. And that was the closest I ever got to success, finishing 3rd in a screenwriting contest. And I realized I couldn't spend the rest of my life trying to run around and sell the screenplay as a 40-year-old guy. So when I was 30, I pivoted to film school. I got a job answering phones at an online dating company while I was putting myself through UCLA film school. And after a year of working at an online dating company, I was like, oh my God, I have to write about this.
I can only imagine the stories that you got.
Writer's right. Like that was the easy part. But it was before online dating was ubiquitous and mainstream. It was early days of online dating. This is 2001, 2002. Yeah. And so the company was called J-Date. It's for Jewish people. It was based in Beverly Hills. And I was just getting yelled at by strangers on the phone like one in customer service does. And I wrote a book called I Can't Believe I'm Buying This Book, A Common Sense Guide to Successful Internet Dating. And unlike anything in my Hollywood career, the book did well. And suddenly I was on CNN and I was on USA Today and I was in Time Magazine, and I was just a guy who wrote a book about online dating before anybody else. And so I dropped out of film school and I became the dating guy. And so I'm like, now there's a billion dating coaches. I was kind of the first one. And I made it up. I take there's no like ego involved. It was literally, I hung out a shingle, called myself America's leading dating expert because nobody had. And started this blog where I answered questions like Dear Abby, like, hey, how can you tell if your boyfriend's falling in love with you? When should you have sex with him? And I just answered those questions. And then by 2016, I had 1 million people a month coming to my blog. And I'm just a writer who had a good idea. 2010, I realized that 80% of the people turning to me, my readers, listeners, clients, were women. Okay. I didn't solicit women. Women came to me. Men need help. They just don't ask for it.
Yes.
So I focused my energies 5 years into my practice on helping smart, strong, successful women who have everything but the guy. And I went really narrow and I went really deep. And I created a signature course called Love You, walking women through that entire process from confidence to commitment. And that's what I've been doing for the past decade. So I'm now in my 21st year of being a dating coach. And I specialize in helping the woman who has everything but the guy.
Wow. That's amazing. I think being able to do that for such a long period of time too. I'm sure you have seen the landscape of dating change and transform. And I'm curious, what has been some of the biggest changes you've seen in your career in terms of dating?
I think online dating, when it was novel, was actually really good. Like when it was new. And again, I'm dating myself. I'm in my early 50s. Everybody I know did it and had some positive experiences with it. My mom did it. My sister got married from it. Like, still, I love that. Now 45% of people meet their spouses online. It's not like it doesn't work for anybody. It's that it used to be Match.com, JD, long written profile, emails back and forth. There was some sense of courtship, right? The way you talk to someone at a bar for an hour and then get their number on a napkin. Like the way it used to be done, there was some semblance of getting to know you. There was information, and it took some time, and you had to differentiate yourself from other people. Dating apps have accelerated the downfall of modern online dating by removing the written profile, removing the email, because we're short attention spans, swipe, text, meet.
Yeah.
And so now everybody has a million options, and there's no investment in any individual. And so I think everybody feels disposable because everybody treats everybody as if they're disposable. Men do it, women do it. And it's the percentage of people who are having a good experience on these apps is negligible. Even if you're, again, an attractive man or an attractive woman, you might have a ton of options, but you have no information about them. And so I just think dating has become more and more soul-sucking. And what we actually need to do is bring back a little old school courtship, right? Men and women have to invest a little more time in getting to know people prior to the date to vet their dates, so that if you go out to dinner with a guy on Saturday night, it's worth your time. It's not the swipe right, text once, meet and greet over coffee. That way lies madness. And so that's part of my job, is helping women market themselves online, differentiate themselves online, screen out men prior to going on a date. Because most people I talk to, Beatrice, would rather go on one decent date every 2 weeks with a guy they're kind of excited about than to go out with 3 total strangers that they hate.
I totally agree. I think that's been something that I've found so frustrating, is when certain dating coaches or people in the dating world are like, you just need to go on as many dates as possible. It's all a numbers game. Just go out. And I'm like, who has time for that? Like, I don't have time to go on 4 or 5 dates a week with people that I probably have zero care for, So I totally agree with that. And I'm glad you said that, because it is, to hear that a lot from people about just, it's a numbers game. Like, it's exhausting and it's soul sucking, like you said.
And again, listen, I haven't gone on a date in 17 years, but I've been on the phone with women for 4 hours a day for that entire time. So it's easy to listen to women and tell you about their struggles. So between the rise of dating apps, the rise of texting, right, and the real or perceived lack of quality men, right, which again I could acknowledge that even if we could quibble about the details, I would say that 90% of men are not even suitable for you to have a conversation with.
I'm sorry, that was actually fun. And I'm actually curious, on that note, why do you think that's so?
I'm making an assumption here, right? My assumption is that my audience, it may be your audience, I don't know that it's the same, but my audience are very well defined. My clients are generally college-educated, 6-figure earners living in big liberal cities or adjacent to them in the suburbs, right? They are themselves 90th percentile women, whatever that means. They self-identify, and they're not going to be dating a guy who has a 100 IQ, who makes $45,000 a year, and is still living in his parents' basement. And that's a good portion of America. And that's not saying anything bad about them. They're just not for my clients. Right. And that's before we get into anything involving what makes them a good partner. These are not bad men that we're talking about. There's a lot of people who are decent people who are just not your people. So I kind of go through life with a 10% rule. I just assume that wherever I go, 10% of people are my people. I mentioned before, I went to a party in Malibu last night. Right? I met a lot of people. How many people did I want to get their number and be like, we should be friends? That's not an insult. Most people are nice, but they're not your people. Well, if we get better at identifying and attracting your people through the skill of online marketing, or write people's online dating profiles for them. So if you get better at attracting more of your people, you get better at screening out the wrong people, so you don't either meet them in person at all, or don't waste too much time with them trying to turn them into your people. Right? Say no. And we're not even just talking about height, weight, age, education, income. We're talking about judging men on effort How bad does he want this job with me? My clients are the CEOs, right? You're the CEO of your love life. Every guy's an intern applying for a job with you. So paying attention to effort, right? You know what it's like, Beatrice, when a guy likes you. What are you doing tonight? What are you doing tomorrow? How about this weekend? The guy who kind of like texts you at 10 o'clock on Friday night, you up?
Oh, it's a hard pass.
Right. It's okay. So we don't give, in my world, my love you world, my love you community, we fire interns left and right. And so my goal, as I said, is not more blind dates. It's higher quality first dates that have the potential to lead to second dates. And if you don't have a good feeling about a guy, you don't talk yourself into it. So many women talk themselves into going out with men that they don't actually want to be there.
Yes.
I want you to listen to your intuition.
I think that's a really good point, because that's one thing I've been talking to a lot of girlfriends about lately is I think we've swung the other side of the pendulum where initially we're like, we say no to everyone, but then we're like, oh, are we missing out on really nice guys? Or are we just saying no? And, so then we'll kind of like convince ourselves, oh, but he's really nice and a great guy, but we're really not feeling it. And then we just keep going on these dates to see if it's ever going to like develop or... So in your opinion, you think if it's really not there from the beginning, it's really not going to grow? Well,
it depends on what you call it. It's there from the beginning, right?
Just a feeling of like, oh, this guy's, I'm interested.
I have a heuristic. I have a gift for your listeners at the end of this conversation. A link that they could get a little mini course, right? Like a
Love it.
6-minute videos kind of walking you through some of the best practices for choosing a good guy online, raising your relationship standards. But for the most part, I tell women something that feels really good and it's very validating. The things you're looking for with a guy on a date are comfort, can I be myself? Fun, did I enjoy this date enough to do it again? And attraction. If the guy tried to kiss me, would I kiss him back? Like, we don't have to overthink this. Not is he the hottest guy I've ever seen, but does he give me the ick? Do I need 6 more beers? And so at the end of the day, if a guy doesn't have positive scores like 6 out of 10 on all 3 of those categories, no reason to go out with him again. Otherwise, you are talking yourself into going out with a guy you're not comfortable with. He may be hot, but he feels like a player, right? Good guy, but boring. God, I couldn't even have a conversation with him. Or I really do. I couldn't imagine kissing this guy in 1,000 years. Right? Just there's no attraction here, and I don't need to talk myself into it just because he's nice and has a good job. So we might eliminate more people that way. But that's okay. You should not have to talk yourself into going out with your husband. Right? I didn't know when I met my wife that she was the one at all. At all. But there wasn't any moment where I was like, I'm not having fun. I can't be myself with her. I have to talk myself into kissing her.
Yeah, well, I think this poses a good point too, because I think sometimes we overthink the first couple dates, right? We're like, is this my spouse? Is this the person I'm going to... Like the first couple, we're like way overthinking it. And I think you make a good point is like, if we're being more selective on who we're actually going on a first date with, then we can take those dates and, and not be so rigid and serious about them, and not saying not be serious as in like, don't show up and not be yourself. And, but it's not finding your spouse on date 1 to 3 or 4 or,
I think that's super wise, Beatrice. And again, you're echoing things that are common themes that I talk about. I talk about it like reading the last page of the book. Right? You get a new book, you just want to see if it has an happy ending. And because most women, if you're single, you haven't had a happy ending. Every guy that you ever met, liked, slept with, gone out with, has turned out to not be your husband.
Yeah,
so
facts.
You had a track record of failure, so you go into a date. What's wrong with this guy? What's his deal? I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to waste time. And that's the wrong energy for dating. And you know that because if you ever got out with a guy who came into the date with that energy.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a lot. It's like off-putting. You're like, whoa, I'm not your wife. Hold up. Right. I don't even know you.
That's what a lifetime of rejection, failure, and disappointment will do. It builds up those defenses. So I always tell clients that unsolicited, if you're going to go on a date, the energy you want is more like you're sitting next to a stranger on an airplane.
Oh, that's a great analogy, though. I love
Right?
that.
Like when you're sitting next, let's say you're sitting next to a cute guy who's in 22B. You're not
Okay.
thinking, oh my God, is this guy my soulmate? Where does he want to be in 5 years? Does he have money? Is he close with his mom? Business or pleasure? What's that book you're reading? Oh, have you been to Denver before? Like, it's just really like light and breezy. You can really even open up to a stranger on an airplane because you might never see him again. It's so much more relaxed because there's no expectations. So how do we treat dating with very little expectations, very little agenda, right? Any more than you're watching a movie on Netflix that turns out to be mediocre. All right, it's 2 hours of my life that I won't get back. It's not the end of the world. But we bring all this emotional baggage to, is he the one? Is he the one? Is he the one?
Yeah.
And that's why dating gets worse and worse and worse, especially when you go at high volume and you're not really selective about who you're meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I was watching a video, Esther Perel did a video about this girl, and she was like, again, same like your clientele. She was like in her mid-30s, very successful, kind of had it all together, strong woman. And she's like, I'm just don't understand. I'm doing all the right things. I'm going on all the dates. And something Esther had mentioned was, you know, I think we go into these dates trying to be intentional, which I understand. And I'm like, yes, that makes sense. But I think coming in with so much of the intentionality, a lot of the early questions are, how many kids do you want? Where you want to live? Where, you know, they become these, you know, and it's like, I understand both sides, because I can understand one side where it's like, well, what's the point of going on a date with someone if they're like, I don't want kids, and you don't find that out till date 3 or 4. But I feel like the other end is you're going in almost like an interview. And that's not fun. That's not exciting. That's not enjoyable for any party. And I think it's because we're trying to mitigate risk in that. Like, we're trying to go in and we're trying to mitigate any sort of hurt, you know. But I wonder too, if we go in with a different mindset of like, I can't be hurt after 3 dates. Like, this person should not have that much power over me that I'm hurt and devastated after 3 to 4 dates, you know?
Interesting. You're a natural dating coach.
So I just, you know what, I just talk to people all day about this. Is like a lot of conversation that comes up, and I see it in friends, I see it in myself, I see it out, and these are all the questions I ask myself. It's like, you know, I'm so interested in this topic because I'm like, something's wrong with the way we're dating today. Like, that's not a lot. That's there is just something wrong. I'm in the middle of it too, and I'm always like, I'm about to be 35 and I'm like, I'm successful, all the things. And I'm like, it's so hard to find someone to connect with. Or you find someone who has all the values you have and you're like, wow, this is great. And you're like, I'm just not attracted to you at all. Like, then you have, so there's always this. So it's just been something I've been fascinated by. Cause I'm like, there's something wrong. And like, how do we come out there and show up better?
I love your observation. I agree wholeheartedly. And my entire life's work is, what are the best practices for dating? All the stuff that you're sort of touching on, right? And I just do it in my course and with a community of women who are going through the course. Confidence, meeting men, dating, understanding men, relationships, commitment. And it's like a library of like little 3-4 minute videos, right? A half-hour video a week that walks you through every single step of that so that you can understand. Maybe it's only a 20% difference between what you're doing naturally and what's most effective. You don't have to have a whole personality-ectomy, right? Most women focus on the external. Maybe if I lost weight, I would attract better guys. Maybe if I had bigger boobs, I would attract better guys. Maybe if I tried on someone else's personality. Maybe if I did what he liked. And none of that is true. The main thing about dating and relationships is changing your choice of men, right? That's it. There is absolutely a lid for your pot, but you've probably been shopping, and I'm going to mix metaphors, shopping in sort of the wrong man aisle of the supermarket. And what's good for you and what you are attracted to, there's not an entire perfect fit and overlap. And I only know this, and I don't say this from a pedestal, that's how I became a dating coach, right? When I was a struggling screenwriter, between that and the first 5 years of my career, I went on 300 dates.
I did read that about you. That is crazy.
I had a count to be able to tell the stories. Not really a humble brag. That's a 24 to 34 was a really fertile time where I wasn't one of those people who was always serial monogamous, not in a relationship with someone for 8 months that I didn't want to be with, I would have 1 month, 2 month, 3 month relationships. Not my wife, not my wife, not my wife. Right. And it didn't even occur to me that I was the common denominator for years. So I got into the same thing that a lot of people got into. It's LA. It's LA. It's the women in LA. It's this website. It was everything but me. Right. And so I had to try something different on to get a different result. And it was like a magical shift. Once I found the formula that was actually compatible with me, I could literally reverse engineer dating and show women how to find compatible men. And that's the exciting part is it's a soft science. It's not physics. But there's absolutely things that everybody can do better that are right there at the surface. It doesn't require years of therapy to accomplish. It literally means if you've been shopping in the junk food aisle of men, start shopping in the chicken and broccoli aisle, right? There's good, healthy men out there, and you've completely overlooked them for the bright and shiny object.
Yeah, and what is that disconnect though? Are people going for, ultra attractive or what? Like, I'm curious what that disconnect is. Like, why are we shopping in the junk food? Do we even know that we're shopping in the junk food aisle? Like, I don't know that we do.
It doesn't look like junk food.
Yeah.
It's junk food dressed up as health food.
Yeah, it's like every supermarket aisle.
So just imagine, we'll make up a guy. We could probably refer to an ex of yours, but we can make up a guy and we could say this guy's 35 years old. He's 6'1". He works for a venture capital firm in Santa Monica. He's charming. He speaks the language. He's done some self-help. He's looking for a wife and kid. He does everything right. And so this guy has it all on paper. There's attraction to him. He's got the right career. You can imagine a whole life with him. And then you sleep with him. He becomes your boyfriend. You fall in love. And then 3 months into the relationship, you realize he's kind of arrogant. He's dismissive of my opinions. He's a workaholic, right? He doesn't put my needs first. I feel like a third priority in his life. And then you hold on and try to hope that guy turns into the man that you want him to be, instead of realizing, if I spend the rest of my life with this guy, I will be miserable. If he proposes to me and I say yes, I will be miserable. I will be a divorce statistic. I will be a single mother of 2 kids with some douchebag, rich workaholic guy.
Who will probably cheat. I'm kidding.
But he seems so great, and I was attracted to him, and we did connect. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
I try to help women listen to their feelings more, to not go off track in the relationship. And that is something that's really counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Women are more intuitive and feeling than men, and they're less likely to listen to and trust their feelings. And I could talk to so many women. I got clients married 25 years. When did you know there's a problem in your relationship? 3 months in.
Yeah.
And you married him and had 2 kids and raised them together, and you still didn't pull the trigger? We were in love.
That is a story I hear a lot. I've asked friends or queens who've gotten divorced. My question is always, was there anything before you got married? And they're like, yeah. And it's like, I always feel like the things that we ignore at the beginning are the reason why it ends at the end. Always.
That's perfect and eloquently stated. And so my job as a dating coach, I use a lot of, again, stupid metaphors. Right?
No, I love it. It's helpful.
I got this little Post-it note if anybody's watching this on video. Everybody who comes to me is here. They're stuck, right? They're either not dating at all, they're burnt out on dating relationships and men, so they're doing nothing, so they can't find love. They're dating online, spinning around, definition of insanity, wondering why I keep dating the same guy in a different body. Or they thought they were going to this destination, which is a happy, healthy, safe, easy relationship, and went off track a long time ago, and there's no way to get back on track. They thought they were going to Boston, they ended up in Chicago, right? And all 3 of those women have a problem that is solvable. The woman who's stuck needs to take action. The woman who's dating online incessantly and finding no success needs to find a different way to market herself and evaluate men early. And the woman who's in the bad relationship needs to exit the bad relationship and learn how to value men. You're valuing the wrong men. For me, my weakness was brilliant women. right? I don't know if sapiosexual. I had a matchmaker turn to me. She's like, what do you like? I said, give me a woman with the biggest brains. I'll figure the rest out. But I really, really like bright women. And so she set me up with a woman who went to Harvard and spoke 9 languages. She was a perfectly nice person. She was blonde and she was Jewish and she had the pedigree. We didn't laugh at all on the date.
Yeah.
Right? And so my wife doesn't possess any of those impressive characteristics that the matchmaker handed me. She's just a person that I've been with for 17 years now, and I've never gotten bored talking to. And it's just a different feeling. It's really more like best friend feeling rather than my anxious attachment style is triggered feeling. Right? The lack of anxiety is a better predictor of your relationship than how he compares on paper. But we're in a society right now, especially with dating apps, we're like, well, why would I ever go out with the 5'9" guy if there's a 6-foot guy? Why would I ever go out with a guy who makes less money if I go out with a guy who makes more money? So swipe left, swipe left, swipe left. And now we're just dating the same guy who looks impressive on paper, who may not be a good person or a good partner for you, despite that. But that's our only dating tool. And everything else feels like settling. And it's not.
I'm curious to ask you, what about the other side of the pendulum that we talked about earlier, where I think, and a lot of my girlfriends and I have talked about this, where we're like, okay, we're no longer no douchebag, no 6 foot. We're like, I don't care about any of that. Like, don't care about your, don't need a finance guy, whatever. But now we're on the other side of the spectrum where we're like, wow, these men are really, really nice. They're caring. They show up. They do all the things. And we're like, we are just not attracted to this person. Like, we're trying. We're giving them time. We're going on the dates. We're trying to show up.
Attraction. So talking yourself into that. I remember having a moment when I was around your age where I went out with someone who was set up. And she was, again, we like similarity. And I think this is another thing. We think similarity is compatibility. It's not. So someone set me up with someone who...
that's a good point.
Went to Duke like I went to Duke, and she liked dogs, and she was from New York, and she was a Yankees fan. I'm like, all this stuff that seemed like really, like, we would have so much in common. And we went on 3 dates that lasted 4 hours, just great conversation. I could not bring myself to kiss her. It sounds terrible. Right? But I went on 3 dates trying to talk myself into it. And there was nothing wrong with her. I don't know what it is. You can't even explain it. You don't have to explain it. But the fact that I've had plenty of people in my life that I didn't have to think too much about kissing meant that I didn't need to force myself to do it. So I went on 3 dates. More evolved, mature dating coach me would have done that on 1 date. I would not have to talk myself into it. There are enough people in that Venn diagram of attractive enough, intelligent enough, fun enough, right, that you could advance to the second date without all this agita, trying to figure this thing out and game this thing out. So I really think that your generation, even more than my generation, has a different kind of problem. And I'm not even judging it. I'm just observing it the way you're observing it.
Yeah.
Women have become more masculine. Men have become more feminine. And so that blurry thing, right, where gender roles have been kind of thrown out the window, which might be good on a larger societal basis if women are indeed getting more law degrees and master's degrees.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Earning the same as men, out earning men, that's a good thing. But society hasn't quite caught up to those changes yet. Women still, I'm not judging women at all. Women got equality, but they still want a guy who's taller, smarter, richer, funnier. Right?
Yeah. I just talked about this in a past show. It was the same thing, like this whole feminist movement, and that's
a real conundrum. So if you're a woman who's making $200,000, well, guess what? Less than 5% of guys are doing that. And if you insist that he makes $201,000, then that's a self-selecting process, and you can't complain that it's going to take longer to find love. Men never were looking for a sugar mama. They historically never were. So a guy who makes $200,000 could easily go out with a woman who makes $50,000, and combined they make $250,000, and they have a nice life together. The woman who makes $200,000, if she's dating a guy who's making $50,000, it's the same net income, but she feels like she's settling.
Yeah.
Right? And so that thing to negotiate, and again, I'm not even giving you like the answer, like the top-down answer, but I could tell you that if you're a woman, dating like a man might be a decent idea. but that's really challenging and people don't want to do that. So people hear something that I'm never saying. If you feel like you're settling, you're settling. There's a difference between settling and compromising. Compromising to happiness, settle into misery, right? But they both involve trade-offs. It's how you feel about it.
Yeah.
I compromised to find love. My wife compromised to find love. We could both tell you what those compromises were. We made trade-offs that feel good, right? So sometimes it takes just a greater imagination. I didn't realize that I could be with a partner who was, divorced, Irish Catholic, completely different background, different needs, different tastes, and be so very happy. I'm thrilled that I made that choice. A lot of people don't go outside of their lane and then say, there's nobody out there. And so my guess is there's someone, if we use our imagination a little bit, maybe it's lowering from 5'11" to 5'9" and doubling your dating pool. Maybe it's, okay, I might want a guy who makes more than 150, but if he makes 95, we could still have a nice life. It's not like he's a loser. He just has a job that doesn't have as much of an upside. Yeah. And sometimes, again, it's just doing like little things like that open the world and expose you to more people who might be compatible instead of, nope, there's no good ones out there. I have to leave Los Angeles. I have to leave New York. To where? Right? Like, where are you going to go that's got a higher population of eligible people? So I think we really, if I'm coaching women really need to listen to their feelings more and ask themselves, does this man make me feel safe? Does this man make me feel like a priority? Can I let down my guard and trust him? And those things have to be on an equal level with the checklist. If we just go checklist, that's what you've been doing and has led you here. Yeah.
And I see that a lot when I talk to girlfriends and people around. It's all checklist and, but we don't align on these other areas, or I don't feel safe with them, or I can't be myself, or I can't open up.
Right.
It's just,
so
then I'm like, what's the point
out the checklist?
Yeah.
Like again, there has to be attraction. Chemistry is a prerequisite. Good sex is a prerequisite for a happy relationship. So anytime people hear me, they're like, he's telling me to settle. He's telling me to settle. No good dating coach in the world would say settling is the answer to the rest of your life, right? But we all make compromises. You do with your job, you do with your friends, you do with your family, you do it at home, right? Like where you choose to live. All of those things. You give up one thing to get another. And so what are we going to give up when it comes to partnership? We just think we could choose all the best qualities and have no bad qualities. And that becomes literally impossible. So for me, if the guy's worst quality is that he's 5'9", I'm okay with that. If his worst quality is he gets angry every time you want to have a serious discussion, I don't care who he is. You're going to have a miserable life with him.
Absolutely. And that's one thing too, in that point, we talk a lot about like emotional maturity in men, and a lot of women are looking for that. From your perspective, what does that look like? Like, as I always challenge people when they say that, I want a man who's emotionally mature, has emotional intelligence. Yeah. And I don't think people always understand what that is. And I'm curious if that is part of kind of the prerequisite, when you're looking for somebody, or what that looks like when I'm looking for a partner. What does that look like? What's emotional maturity? What's,
I think emotional maturity is someone whose default setting is to be a problem solver rather than a finger pointer. Right? Who sees the us as greater than the sum of their individual desires, who puts relationship first. And I got a friend who taught me something years ago. He's been married for longer than I was, so I share this in my own coaching. He said, don't evaluate the person, evaluate the relationship. That person on paper compared to other people might be a 7, but if your relationship is a 10, you're the winner. And I feel like if you talk to people who are in happy relationships, they've all independently arrived at that conclusion, right? Like any happily married person could go out and be like again, maybe ask your friends, maybe your friends are all still goo gaga for their husbands, but for the most part, they could say, I know hotter guys than my husband. I know smarter guys than my husband. I know richer guys than my husband. but my husband's the only person I feel like I could actually build a life with, who allows me to be all of me, including the messy parts, and he's not going anywhere, and I never have to doubt where I stand with him. So to me, an emotional maturity is the ability to accept someone in full instead of blowing things up, arguing, running. We saw, again, I just did a podcast that's going out on Saturday about this. The new Netflix show, Nobody Wants This. Did you watch it?
Oh my God. Yes.
So the end part where she's the podcaster who talks about dating, right? And she's doing everything to be the crazy girl and blow this thing up. And what's his biggest crime? He's a mensch. He tries to impress her family. He's really sweet and a little cheesy. That's the biggest thing she's trying to run from and blow up. And when she tries to, he says, I can handle you. And every woman's heart melts, because that is what everybody wants. Now, most men aren't up to the task. Like that's a real thing. That's why I say, I think only 10% of men are emotionally capable of being that guy. But that guy could come in different forms. And that guy could be a different religion and could have different politics and could be a different height and could be like, cannot be your type. But the most important thing is that piece of it. Emotional maturity first, and then everything else becomes sort of negotiable. My wife, compromised on religion. She's with a Jewish guy. I compromised on age. I wanted to have 2 kids, and my wife was 38 when we met. That was really scary. We made compromises that worked for us, and they worked out for both of us. I got my 2 kids, and she didn't go to church, but she's okay with our kids being Jewish. Like, this may not work for other people. It worked for us. But if we use those things as deal breakers, if we were on the first date and I was like, I want to have 2 kids, you're 38, so bye. And she's like, I went to 16 years of Catholic school. You want your kids to be Jewish? Fuck that. If we negotiated that right up front, because we were in that interview mode, nothing happens. So I'm, as I said, I'm not giving advice from any sort of pedestal. I'm the guy who went on 300 dates, been coaching women for 20 years about these are the things you compromise on, these are the things you don't. And how do you know it's a good compromise? It feels good. You actually don't spend any time thinking about what you gave up, because what you're gaining in terms of love and trust and support and companionship and fun and sex is greater than what you're giving up. And that's hard for people. Everybody's a perfectionist in love. Nobody wants to give up anything to get it. Especially when you have one choice. This is the one person I'm going to build my life with. So I would really build my life with someone of high character and high communication skills, right? Rather than the person who I could parade around to my friends. I got the most impressive guy, but privately in our home, he makes me feel like shit. He texts me once a week. He's dismissive of my emotional needs. The best predictor of whether a guy's going to be a good husband, and this is not me speaking, this is sensitive to his wife's emotional cues, helps out with housework and child rearing. The best husbands have feminine qualities, but women are still more attracted to masculine energy men. And that blend ultimately is what's going to determine your happiness.
Yeah.
And women, understandably, just like a guy wants a woman who could cook and be the lawyer at the law firm and is also naughty in bed. The guy wants all those things and doesn't realize sometimes they contradict each other. Right? If you want the Marlboro man who's strong, he doesn't want to talk about his feelings. He doesn't really want to listen to yours, but boy, he's hot. You also want the best friend, the sweet, sensitive guy, but man, he doesn't turn me on. I don't feel supported by him because he's so weak. So the answer is always in the middle, always in the middle. And when you land in the middle, then you won't be so in your head. And that's where my clients land, is they spent their life vacillating between douchey alpha male and weak guy who's so flawed they got to prop him up and save him and be his mommy. That's how I was explaining that it seems like you swing from one end to the other, and it's really getting, there's a middle ground, and we'll call that middle ground 10% of men. And that's it. Then that's where the numbers game comes in. It's not just going on blind dates with total strangers to find the 10%. We need to do a better job of screening for first dates, so you don't feel soul sucked and time wasted. But if you can be online, again, in my little mini course that I'm going to give your your listeners, all these principles I lay out in simpler fashion, in a linear fashion. But if you can, theoretically, get online for a half hour a day, like you could find time to go to the gym and you could find time to meditate, you could find time to take off your makeup. Like if you have time to do those things, you can get online, screen guys, build a little trust, go on better first dates, minimize the number of bad dates. Don't waste time with a guy who doesn't meet your very basic needs on that first date.
Yeah.
Right. And at the very least, once a month, I could almost promise you, if you are a semi-attractive woman who has options online, you're going to find a guy you like. And I know this because I've been coaching this for so long. I remember there was a client, 41. She's now married. She's got a kid. She's a professor in New York. And we walked her through this entire process. And she got devastated by, there was a guy she got really excited about. And a couple dates in, and he ghosted. And she was kind of crushed. And we went through a couple cycles of this. And I said to her, I won't say her name, I said, how long is it until you find another guy that you're excited by? She goes, average 4 weeks before she finds another one she's excited about.
Yeah.
So that's why I know it's only a matter of time. Some people, I got a client who found a boyfriend on her 5th Match.com date last week. That was great. But if I told you or your listeners, you have to go on 20 mediocre dates once a week between now and March. But on the 21st date, you'd find your husband. Would you do it?
Probably, yeah. If it's like guaranteed, you're like, yeah, I could do it.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
If you could go on, not bad dates, we want to minimize bad dates by spending more time screening them.
Yeah.
More FaceTime, more phone call, anything to avoid a bad date. So spend more time up front vetting your dates, fewer bad dates, better first dates that feel more like second dates. And if you go on one date a week, next, every once in a while, you'll find the guy that you spark to. And then you're going to see that guy has the same interest and effort as you. And then all the guessing games go away. What should I do? Should I text? Should I call? Should I respond? Should I make him wait? All out the window. Because when a guy really likes you, you know it. And that's why we go back to the word easy. If a woman's asking me questions, and one of my clients is asking me questions, so there's this guy, and we've texted 3 times, but I haven't heard from him in 3 days. Should I reach out? Let's not talk about this guy until you've gone on 3 dates with him. Like, well, we'll talk about it. I'm not dismissive of it, but he's not real. He's just
like collect some data there.
He's just a face on a website. You have no actual investment in each other.
Yeah.
He's just kind of a fantasy. He's hope. He's potential, but he's not real. So when you find a guy who's excited and interested, I just had a client with 2 guys, and she's on 3 dates with both of them, and they both want to be her boyfriend. And now she's in the CEO seat. She said, no, not ready to be your boyfriend. No, not ready to be your boyfriend. But you can keep courting me, and you can keep on doing everything you're doing, and at least I know where you stand. And I need a few more weeks to evaluate whether I'm ready to commit to you and whether I'm ready to sleep with you. That's a high-value woman who's got 2 guys who want to be her boyfriend, and she's kept them at bay, and she hasn't slept with them. That's power. And so that's the thing that I try to give women, is the power to be the person that has the ability to say no to men and say yes to men, and doesn't have to be on the please, please, please pick me.
Exactly. It's the confidence. It's like, I am not wasting my time trying to get someone to like me. It's like, wait, I'm in the driver's seat deciding if I like them. Right. And I think we spend a lot of time on the other side. I think when we don't know ourselves, when we're not confident in ourselves, we don't know what value we bring to the table, then I think the system breeds it too. And that's the unfortunate part. Online dating apps, the high volume of the swiping and the texting and the very low quality interactions compared with you and me. Again, we talk about you and me meet at a bar and we talk for an hour. Very different,
quality interaction that's going to make you feel really good about giving me your phone number at the end of the night. None of these are high quality interactions. We have so little data, so little information, right? That it's almost crazy that we expect anything from anybody, right? We expect this guy that we like. Oh, I finally found a good one. Well, he's talking to 10 other people just like you. He's not your boyfriend, but in our head, we're already getting ahead of ourselves. So I think the medium is really, really flawed. So we have to be able to sort of pull back from it and recognize it for what it is. This is not like a husband finding venture. This is a box filled with single people, right? And if you got onto a random bus or went into a mall and you threw a dart, what are the odds that you're going to hit someone you like? There's no screening process for these. Like literally anybody could get on it. So that's why by setting realistic expectations, okay, you could say no to 90% of guys. You could keep your standards really high, not telling you to settle. But if you're open to 10%, good things will happen. If you're open to only 0.01%, it's going to go really slowly.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I think that's something I hope our listeners today take away is, it does get exhausting. Like I've been on the apps, I've done all the thing, and you start to I think my initial strategy was, okay, I'm not going to go for the ultra hot, I'm like, okay, we're going to go for the middle of the ground. Like he's attractive. I think there's something there, and then kind of move on and filter. Because I think when you have such little data to go off of on the apps, what do you go off of? It's tough. You can't like them all because then they're all chatting with you and you're like, now I'm overwhelmed, So it's what's your advice there? How do you even filter through that when it comes just to photos and a profile? What advice would you give?
What's funny is that a dozen years ago I did a TED talk, and it was when dating apps were just rising before they became ubiquitous. But I identified this problem even back then. And so what I'm talking about sounds like somewhat of an antiquated solution. It's just the best that I've got. Because remember, with everything, whether it has to do with social media or mental health or remote work or things that society has adopted that may or may not be fully good for us, right? I think we just have to make the best of a flawed situation. So if the problem is too low quality interactions, stuck in texting hell, the guy you want to ask you out doesn't ask you out. Other guys are like, hey, you're hot, let's meet. What are you doing tonight? What are you doing tomorrow? Pushy, pushy, pushy. This has been around forever. This is not new.
Yeah.
Men want speed, women want comfort. So we need to find a point on the Venn diagram where men get speed and women get comfort. If you get bullied into a blind date with a total stranger, it doesn't feel good. Right? And if a guy has to spend a whole month, right, courting you to be able to meet you in person, right, only to discover that you don't like him and don't find him attraction in the first 5 seconds, that's no fun for him either. That's a long investment of time.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to look to get from dating site, dating app to a date in less than a week, but have a little bit of momentum. So I say bring back, again, it's not gonna sound weird, but old school online dating, right? Had more information, profiles and emails. If we're going to text, we need to have more meaningful text. It can't be like, hey, what's up? Not much you. Here's a picture of my feet. Here's a picture of my dinner. It can't just be that. We need to actually have something. If we're going to text, which is horrible, but if what we got, we have to have text conversations that mean something. And those text conversations, once you establish a unique connection and differentiate him from all the other noise, has to lead to a phone conversation, a FaceTime, a Zoom, something. That's your first date.
Got it. I think that's smart.
And if you can get a good text conversation with a guy, like, okay, he seems normal, then you get on FaceTime, you plan it. You don't just text back and forth, right? Phone tag stuff. Like, hey, I'm driving home from work tomorrow at 7. Let me know if you're available. Love to hear the sound of your voice and catch up and get to know you better. He feels like he's making progress and moving forward, right? So it doesn't feel like he's stuck. So that's what he wants. Yeah. Meet. If your counteroffer is a FaceTime call, right? The right guy will take the bait. Now, what people used to do is go on blind coffee dates, get dressed up, drive across town. 5 minutes in, kill me. Yeah. Now you get on the phone, maybe put your makeup on, and if you want to get off the phone in less than a half hour, just save yourself a shitty date, not a soul-sucking. And if you have a great conversation that lasts an hour and a half, guess what? Your first date, you're going to feel really excited and really comfortable. And that first in-person date is going to feel like a second date. So you're going to have more intimacy. So the magic is actually what the phone was invented for, which was to talk to people. And now that we've got cameras, right? Everybody goes straight from texting to meeting, and their texting is one line. So let's just bring back more connection to dating. Like, that's my message, is we've dehumanized it and everybody feels it.
Yeah.
So let's treat people like individuals. Not everybody's worth your time. That's okay. You're going to have to reject most guys. Right? But when you find a decent guy, make longer form conversation with him via text, make longer form conversation via phone, right? Now that once a week date is not going to feel like such an annoying crapshoot.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. I really do. And I think especially just in where we are in LA, I'm seeing a lot more in-person events, and people are really like, there's all these dating events. We just had Date Week 2 weeks ago. It's a whole week long where there's just events every day for singles. So, and it's just awesome. I think there's so many more opportunities out to meet also in person. But if we're still on the apps, I think everything you just said is so valuable. So valuable.
Yeah. I mean, again, we could spend all our time talking about online dating, and we have. I mean, it's where people's love life generates, right? It's lead generation. It's not, there's nothing more to it. The dating relationship conversation is just as interesting, but it's only relevant if you actually have a relationship. Like, how do you know whether a guy's worth keeping? What are the trade-offs you make? And again, let's just reduce it to feelings, because you can have the best guy on paper, right? But if you do not consistently feel safe, heard, and understood within that relationship, what's the point of the relationship? It's supposed to be additive. So when I talk to women who are in relationships where they're anxious and they feel drained and worried, and that's like the default setting is, I don't know where I stand. If I talk to him, he's going to get angry, or he might break up with me, and then I'll have to go back to the apps, and I don't want to go back to the apps. And so people stay in an anxious state, right, for an indefinite amount of time, because they would rather be with a highly flawed guy who couldn't make them happy in the future than to be back out there. That's how bad dating has gotten.
Yeah.
So we really need to, right, like, again, if I'm coaching women, really need to listen to your heart more and listen to those anxious feelings. Anxious feelings mean you should not be with this guy for 1 second longer. Not, how do I fix it? How do I make it go away? Find a guy whose default setting is to show up for you. Yeah. And then most of the fear is going to go away. And don't run from that. Don't run from the guy because he's consistent. Right? And that's the other thing.
Well, I was like, that's the other thing.
Fashion style is, if a guy's being really consistent, right, it feels funny because I'm so used to guys being distant. I'm so used to guys being abandoned. Right? So we value the roller coaster ride. Part of my evolution in relationships was when I was with my wife, I thought of breaking up with her. And again, this is not insulting her. I'm the happiest married guy to ever meet. I thought of breaking up with her. I was like, this is too easy. She's never going to leave me. And I was like, wait, why do I value that? Why do I want something more exciting? I don't want more exciting. You want someone who predictably will wake up next to you every day for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Right? And that's the flip side of the excitement of not knowing. And the not knowing is like a dopamine machine. It's a slot machine. And so imagine something that just paid out cherries every time you did it. It should be predictable. And for a lot of people, that doesn't feel like love. Love feels more like a roller coaster. So we need to disassociate the roller coaster feeling and be like, think of it more like, who's the person in the world who loves you the most, who would never let you down? Is it your mom? Is it your sister? Is it your best friend from college? That is the actual feeling of marital love.
Yeah. And then not to discount the attraction in that too. No, I think I want to make a note to that for sure. Like, find the consistent guy who's there, who's pursuing you, but don't try just because he's doing that. Don't try to make it the right person for you. Because I think that's where we also get trapped on the other side of the spectrum.
Lots of nice guys.
Lots of them that will pursue you, that will put you first, that will sacrifice you and all the wonderful things. But if you're just not attracted, you're not feeling connected to this person, it doesn't matter.
So that very basic level chemistry is a non-starter. The problem is when people say chemistry equals compatibility. Oh, because I feel like I'm in love with him, therefore he's going to be a compatible partner. So chemistry will not keep any couple together. Right? No. Like, when you're in a good relationship, sex is the icing on the cake. In a bad relationship, sex is the cake.
Yep.
Right? So we need to have a baseline level of chemistry otherwise it's not even a conversation. But now that we have our chemistry, is he exhibiting the qualities of a good partner? And can you continue to count on this guy? Not was he nice for the first month or two? Does he continue to perform so that you think, okay, this intern has a future at the company? Any guy who's worth his salt can get the job. Any guy who's charming, any guy who's cute could get in there for a month. Right? So we have to really pay attention to character and consistency and follow through and those feelings, which we sweep under the rug. So I think if I had one message before we close, listen to your feelings. They don't lie.
Yeah. The gut, the instinct. I think that's one thing as women that like, I think we really do struggle listening to it. But as women, I think we have such strong intuition and we just have to be able to tap into it and listen to it way more and not second guess ourselves on those. So, Evan, thank you so much. This was such an insightful discussion and chat. I thank you for coming on and for sharing all this. I think people will really get a lot out of this and find different ways to approach their dating life in this society that we're in.
No, it's really, really kind of you. I'm glad you're doing this. And as I said, for your listeners who stuck around to the end of this podcast, maybe you could even put it in the show notes. I gave a special gift. So if you go to evanmarkkatz.com, evanmarkkatz.com/let's talk. It's my free mini course. I forgot the title. Perfect. It's a long title, but I think it's Raise Your Relationship Standards, 7 Steps to Attracting a Quality Commitment-Oriented Man or something like that. And it's some of the principles we were just talking about today about how to both, come from a place of confidence, generate quality opportunities online, vet men on the first date so you're not wasting your time, and pay attention to how he treats you and how you feel in the relationship. So we covered a lot of ground today, and that's what the mini course is for. We did.
That's awesome. And we'll definitely add in the show notes for everyone listening and interested in that. We'll have it linked up for you. And I think it's a great course. I think I'm going to actually do it. So I'll definitely take a look at it.
It's free and it's really easy. And the people who really enjoy that, if you like this and you want to be a part of a community of women who are committed to relationship success, my courses love you. And you can reach out to me, and I'm glad to hold your hand through this process so you don't have to go at it alone.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Beatrice. You did a great job.